There are intros and outros in the podcast. We are just working on the topics. Some topics can be compressed into 15 to 18 minutes. You really go with the value out there. Even if it's one podcast is about 15, 18 minutes, it's okay to just launch it.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
A lot of people will be hearing this at any time of the year, but for a couple of you who are true fans and listening over the holidays, I just wanted to let you know that I'm not really going to do a solo episode today, even though that would be the normal thing. I'm going to take a little break for just 3 weeks total. And so this is going to be one of the recordings of an interview that I had that I think will help you to become a better podcaster. So let's just dive in. Hey, what's up, podcaster? Today, if you've got some questions on like, how do I grow my podcast? How do I do this? How do I do this? You might be in for a treat because I've got Ashish Sanan. Why is there so many SHs and then just regular S's? I'm the worst. And I'm getting over COVID. So I just had COVID and my head is cloudy. You probably hear me sniffle, but it makes it even harder to say Ashish Sanan. So I feel like an idiot, but been friends for a little while and he's actually doing real estate syndication. So you have probably heard me talk about real estate. I've been doing that since 2005. And so I've got a whole bunch of friends in that industry. And I made a post on social and I'm offering it to you, the listener, as well for free coaching. I just want to do like a 20, 30, 40-minute coaching call where you ask whatever you want. And Ashish is here today asking whatever he wants because he and his business partner might actually start a podcast. And so he's got like 4 questions queued up that I think you're going to want to know. So stay tuned. His bio is in the show notes. His company website is in the show notes. And you don't have a podcast now, right? You don't have one today, correct?
We just launched it.
Oh, you launched it.
We just launched it.
Okay.
During the time that, I was trying to schedule it with you, we just launched it.
Cool. Well, you know what? Then I'll put your podcast link. Also, it's in the show notes already for the listener. So they'll be able to just grab it and check out your podcast. And if you're listening, go and check his podcast out. Do me a giant favor, him a giant favor. You'll probably learn something, but give him an honest rating and review. Whatever you think he deserves, just write it and let him know. That'll really help, especially because his podcast is so brand new. So he's got 4 questions queued up. They're going to help you. His bio's in the show notes, his website's in the show notes, and his podcast is in the show notes. So Ashish, what's question number 1, sir?
Thank you so much, Adam. Appreciate it for this session today. The number 1 question that I have is, how much time is adequate you're launching your own podcast? The attention span is shrinking now, as you know, for people. So some people talk about 45 minutes, 1 hour, 30 minutes. So what's the right time?
Perfect. I like it. The best start to answering question number 1 about the length of a podcast episode is probably going to start with questions, like just wanting to know your perfect avatar. So Ashish, when you think about like whoever your avatar is, then your avatar is your perfect client. Your perfect, let's just pretend you want to raise capital. And so you want a passive investor. Let's just pretend that for a second. And it's an engineer. I'm just throwing things out there.
Yeah.
And you want to think about that engineer. You will probably want to give him or her a name. And then you want to probably think like, what's the length of time that's going to be best for him or her? That's the beginning. So tell me about your avatar and let's see if we can kind of brainstorm the length of your podcast.
Yeah, the typical avatar is a Silicon Valley tech executive, senior management professional who's very busy. And definitely 1 hour is too much.
Okay.
People, at that level, they want the maximum value out of what they're listening. So what they're feeding into their head in a short amount of time. But again, we have to do justice to the topic that we are discussing. So you cannot really box it in a very short time, right?
You're really answering your own question here. I love it. I love it. Listeners getting a lot out of it too. So here's the thing. When you're thinking about putting out content for your Silicon Valley tech executive with little to no time, and he wants the maximum amount of value, but he doesn't want it to be shorter than it needs to be or longer than it needs to be. This is a very normal thing
I believe that some podcast hosts, they think that their episode needs to be a certain number. They might start a podcast and say, all right, we need to fill an hour of time. We need to fill 30 minutes of time. We need to fill 5 minutes of time. And what will happen is they'll get stressed if they're going over. They're adding value, but the host is like, oh crap, I'm going over 30 minutes. I was supposed to be 30 minutes and I still have some value to drop. Mm-hmm. I believe that that's totally okay.
Okay.
If it's longer than 30 minutes and you had your mindset on about 30, but there's still good value coming out for your tech exec, you're good. He's good, getting what he needs out of it, and he's getting value. And if he does have a drive to work, for example, and let's just say that the drive is 25 minutes and you made an episode that was 45 minutes, it's not a big deal. Most people listen to part of it and they're loving it. And if you're hooking them, giving them good value, and that they know that they need it, they're going to listen to the rest when they come home. So don't stress about the length of the episode too much. You had the two biggest things. One of them is, we've discussed a moment ago, one of them is don't go purposefully longer than the content needs.
Okay.
Because that's just wasteful. And secondly, don't cut it short and not deliver the value of a topic because you think that it needs to be under a certain time. On my podcast, I generally try to do every other episode. Now, with these coaching calls, I'm guessing 200-ish people reached out and said that they wanted to do these free coaching calls. And we're going to do them. I'm going to spend the time doing them. And that might be 200 episodes. And it might change some stuff. It might change a few things for what I'm doing on the podcast. But my goal is to keep it as short as I can, but have the value, just like what you're doing. So some of my episodes, they might be 20-minute interviews, and they might be 45-minute interviews, and they might be an hour and 5-minute interviews. As long as I really feel like it's going somewhere, we're dropping value and we're giving a takeaway every now and again for the listener, I'm happy. And I think the listener's happy too. And when I do my solo episodes, I decided I'm going to try to do half of my episodes. Every even number is one thing, every odd number is the other. I try to do a solo episode every other episode. And for those, my goal is generally 5 minutes.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, they are normally 15 or 20 minutes. Just because I want to give tangible things that are going to help. And I get a lot of feedback that the coaching call episodes are some people's favorite. Especially, I had Julie Hawley for like a dozen episodes, and that was just a way to do it. She's also in the real estate space, and she needed some coaching, and we worked something out. We would record all of the coaching calls. And that's kind of how I got this idea. And people love that. And other people love my solo episodes. They're like, oh, when you do your solos, those are my favorite. I feel like you're talking to me. I feel like you're giving me the most amount of value. And those are only usually try to get them under 20 minutes most of the time, unless I have enough value. All right. So that's the answer, I think, for question number one.
Yep. No, great. Thank you so much. I think those are some really good piece of advice.
And how about number two, sir?
Yeah. So number two, there are intros and outros in the podcast. We are just working on the topics as to what we're going to be doing it. So some topics really can be compressed into like 20 minutes. And I think you answered it that you really go with the value out there if you can deliver it in like 15 minutes. Because sometimes I think, is 15 minutes too short, 15 to 18 minutes? So basically, okay. So I think it's okay. Even if it's one podcast is about 15, 18 minutes, it's okay to just launch it.
Heck yeah, man. And still getting over this. Dang it. Yeah. And with that said, there are some benefits to having shorter episodes also. As long as they're valuable, then people are really feeling like they got something out of it. So if you can do it, if you're able to do it and pack a punch, like really have that value driven, people are going to leave really, really, really happy. And additionally, the part that I really wanted to share that can be a huge benefit if you have 5, 10, 15, 20-minute episodes, then you might have people binge listening, which just means that they'll listen to multiple at the same time. And so maybe they listen to an 8-minute episode and a 12-minute episode at the same time instead of just like one half of a 1 hour episode. And what can happen is you can trigger some algorithms within the podcast playing platforms when those people are doing it. It basically just lets the podcast player know that people are interested and listening to multiple instead of a half of an episode. So there can be some additional benefits to keeping them short when it makes sense and when they're still packed with a punch.
Got it. Next question that I just was wondering during our conversation here, how important it is to have some humor within because most of the talks are serious, and I don't want to say that the tech world is serious. People are fun loving people. I love talking to people, meeting people, but how do you bring that natural humor into your podcast?
For me, I'm not the funny. I'm not the funniest guy. For me, what I do though is I just try my very hardest to be my actual self. Okay. This is the most important thing that I think. This is such a good takeaway for the listener today, and hopefully for you, Ashish. It's like earlier when I was trying to say Ashish and Sanan at the same time, but I was like taking an SH out somewhere and adding an SH just because there's a lot of S's and SHs. And I was dyslexic on it and just really just messing it up.
You're fine.
And for me, I was like, you know what? It's not a big deal. Like I totally screwed it up, but that type of thing happens. And I don't want my listener, I didn't re-record it. I didn't say, oh, I feel like a dummy. I'm embarrassed. Let's stop and re-record. I never said that. Like if you were offended, then I would apologize, and I would still apologize on camera, right? I hope you're not.
Not at all.
There's a good part of it that's just me being sick. But what I'm trying to say is that in a way that's funny, in a way that's entertaining, in a way that my listener knows me better. They know that I don't take myself too seriously. They know that you don't have to be perfect on a podcast. I'm not trying to say to my listener, you got to be perfect. I want them to be real. That's my whole thing. Like, I might not be super funny. I have said, that's what she said jokes before. Yeah. My guest will say something random and I'll be like, that's what she said. And it is funny. It is humorous, but it's going to offend one or two people, I'm sure. But I don't care, because if it truly offends them, they're not my people. That's not the person that I probably want to do business with. Somebody who's cool with me being me to the fullest, those are the type of people that I want to hang out with. So
totally,
if you have humor, then just do it. And if not, it's fine. Just be yourself to the core. With that said, there's a lot of people that think that they're being themselves, but they're used to being in a professional setting.
Yeah.
But when they're with their wife, when they're with their buddies, they're funny as shit, man. They joke around, they laugh, but then all of the other times, they've become something else. And I think when you're on your podcast, you should be that joking, laughing, humorous person. Like, you should just be who you are to the core, who you love to be. And
makes sense.
Don't be afraid that you're going to turn somebody off. Like, I have learned that most people, most humans are okay with imperfections and real and raw and some cussing here and there. Like, I have found that most people are okay with it. And if they're not, at least in my case, they know me. They know who I am. They know how I am. They know where they stand with me, and they can make easy decision if I'm somebody that they want to work with. So anyway, don't worry about the humor necessarily. Just be yourself. And one of the best ways to do that is to just chill. Just chill. Don't try to impress anyone. That's the part that I think a lot of people mess up, is they jump on and they're like, I need to be a certain person. You don't need to be a certain person. Just be you.
No, thank you. This is a good point. I will make a note of that. And what do you think about natural lighting versus the artificial light that people stick it on their laptop? I hear natural is always in front of the window right now.
Yeah. So I've got a whole studio. I have, not everybody would be able to see it, but I'll just kind of show for anyone who's like watching. So I've got a little studio. I've put egg carton sound dampening stuff on my walls and partly on the ceiling. And I've got carpet in here. That stuff is kind of important to me, is to just treat your space to have a good sound quality. I address your questions generally based on an audio experience.
Okay.
Because my company, we serve podcasters. Yes, technically we will edit video for you. We will publish it on YouTube for you. We will make videograms and put them on your social for you. We kind of handle all that stuff, but it's much more important to me to have a good sound quality than a video quality.
I see.
And so with me, yes, I've got lighting. I've got a few of these flood lamps set up. I've got 3 of them in the office now, and one of them's just in storage because I don't know where to put it, but I've got 3 of them. I've got a green screen. I use that stuff. It looks good. It works well, but that's not the important thing to me. The audio experience is far more important than the video experience. And I will share with you something about the audio experience for you right now. You're using a Blue Yeti. It's turned in a direction that's not necessarily correct for it. And so basically what you can do is on that Blue Yeti, I want you to tell me what you had for breakfast right now. And then I'm going to coach you on using this mic and then tell us what you're going to have for lunch. Okay. So right now, just tell us what you had for breakfast. We're going to listen to it and see how it sounds. And then we'll move the mic around and then we'll have you tell us what you're going to have for lunch.
Okay, I skipped breakfast, so I didn't eat anything except black coffee. Yeah, that's it with butter in it.
So to the listener, do you hear the echo? Do you hear the after he says black coffee, you hear the room noise? The Blue Yeti's not the best mic. It has really good marketing. It has great marketing. And so when you launch a podcast, you're probably going to go to Amazon and you're probably going to type in podcast mic. And the first one that probably comes up is the Blue Yeti.
Yeah.
And it's like $129, I think. I think it's like around $129, unless it's on sale of that day. And they're not great, but we can work with Ashish today on this call to make it work a little bit better. So you're not seeing him unless you are watching the video. He's got the Blue Yeti. Basically, it's kind of pointed backwards to how it's supposed to be and kind of pointed sideways. So it's basically pointing up to the ceiling, and it's what's called a cardioid condenser mic. A condenser, that term means I'm super sensitive, which means I'm going to pick up all of the sounds. I'm going to pick up the echoes, the room noise. I'm going to pick up your chair. I'm going to pick up your breathing. I'm going to pick up the dog barking. I'm going to pick up the mailman. I'm going to pick up the kids running by, somebody knocking on your door, the doorbell ringing, Amazon coming, whatever. It's going to pick it up because it's very sensitive. The cardioid, word cardioid, means directional. It means directional. It means that you're able to, on the Blue Yeti, and I'm not advertising for a Blue Yeti, you're listening to me teach you how to use it. It's only because 8 out of 12 of you probably have a Blue Yeti. So I'm just going to teach you how to use it real quick. First and foremost, change it farther away from your mouth to super duper close. That's the first thing. So put it as close as you can. Secondly, you want to turn it on to one of the symbols on it. Looks kind of like a heart. It kind of looks like a heart. And that symbol, it means, do I want to use the directional function? And so you say, yes, I want it to be directional because I really only want you to pick up my voice and not the rest of the room.
So it says pattern, and on the top it says gain. And it swings from one side to the other.
There's 2 knobs.
Yeah.
And one of them is the gain. And the other one is the pattern. You want to turn the pattern to the one that looks closest like a heart. Now, the bottom of the heart, it's not a point. It's kind of like a circle with like, maybe it's a butt. We'll call it a butt, not a heart.
Yes.
So that'll be your directional function. And then you want to turn the mic so that you see both of those buttons. Both of the knobs need to face you. And then you want to turn the gain. You want to adjust the gain till I tell you. So go ahead and turn it to you and tell me, I don't know, what are you going to have for dinner tonight? Just turn it toward you. Let me re-say what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Put the mic where it needs to be, and then I'll have you adjust the volume. Don't point the mic. So you're not going to want to point the mic. You don't want to talk to the top of the mic. You want to talk to the front of the mic for this one. Okay. So for the Blue Yeti, you need to be looking at the knobs.
Oh,
the knobs have to face you.
Okay. Yes.
All right. And you want it to be close to you. And then how about if it seems like you're probably at about 15, 20% gain, and I just want you to go to about 25, 30% gain. And let's see how that sounds.
Okay. How about now?
Let me try something. Will you turn the whole mic completely around and then say, how about now again?
How about now?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Is it?
That's perfect. This is correct.
Okay.
This is the right way. So to the listener, I want you to let them know what you might have for lunch today.
I have a lunch meeting, so I'm going to have some salad and some fish, most likely.
Bro, it sounds way better.
Okay.
It sounds way, way better. There's still some echo because it's still a condenser mic. It's just sensitive enough to pick up all the room noise. But when you've turned your gain down, you're talking on the correct side of the mic, and it's pretty close to you. And so you're not getting as much of that sound. It's sounding pretty legit. I mean, I'm not trying to advertise for these Blue Yetis, but it's sounding pretty good. So I like it. And I think this is the way that you should focus on it next time.
Perfect.
If you use this one.
Yeah, I have the arm, but I'm just lazy. I didn't put it similar to what you have it.
Oh, yeah. The arm will help, but don't turn it sideways like that.
Like
We had it perfect a second ago and
Okay.
really want that side to face you. So even more. Now it's kind of facing up to a random area. Have it face directly to you. Turn it again backward. I'll tell you when to stop. And then straighten it, tilt it up. Also, tilt it up. Yep. Just about like this. Now try. Now say something.
Okay. How about
Yes, it's so good. It sounds so good when you have it like that. All right. Ashish, you mentioned something earlier about the intro and outro. I want to touch on that. It was during your first question. You were talking about the length of an episode, how much time is going to be adequate. And I want to talk about the intro and outro real quick. Intros, the goal will be 15 seconds. Your thought is, how can I hook my audience, my perfect avatar, that tech professional, that they have to listen to this podcast? How can I do that in the shortest amount possible? Okay. And if you crush it, that's a 15-second introduction. If you do badly, it's a 30-second introduction. If you do okay, it's 20 seconds. So I want the listener and you, Ashish, to think about your intro, hooking your perfect client in the shortest amount of time. On my podcast, it says something like, most hosts never achieve what they're looking for out of their podcast. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, which means they have no listeners and their show ends up costing them money. This show was created for you so that you could gain listenership and make money while you're at it. Here's your host, Adam Adams. It's about 15 to 20 seconds. It's pretty compelling. It calls out my exact avatar. It has them being like, okay, I'm not alone if I'm going through this, and Adam can help me. So you want something as close to that for your intro. And then for your outro, it could be any length of time. Honestly, it could be any length. Mm-hmm. My favorite thing to do on my podcast is to have 3 or 4 different outros. Okay. A problem that people make when they're doing their outro is they want their listener to do everything. Okay. So they do one outro. It's 2.5 minutes long. I might be exaggerating, but there's one outro. It's 2.5 minutes long, and there's 9 calls to action. That part's not really an exaggeration. 9 calls to action. Let's give you an example of it. You come in, you say, thank you for listening to the podcast on podcasting. I really appreciate you. If you got value out of today's episode, go ahead and leave an honest rating and a review. And make sure leave a review. That's the first one. The second one is make sure you're subscribed. They will be like, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any episodes. And then they'll say, and share this episode with a friend who needs it. That's another call to action. Share this episode. And then they'll say something like, check out the next episode. And so that's a 5th call to action. They'll also say something like, what else? There's too many. If you want to download my free PDF, my free book, my free videos, I've got a course on that. You can go to blablabla.com/videos. And make sure you follow me on Facebook. That URL is adam.aaa.adams. And then follow me on Facebook. Additionally, my handle on all of the other things is Podcast Adam. Go ahead and follow me there if you want. And all of a sudden, you've got 9 calls to action. And the listener is like, what the hell do you want me to do? You've confused me so much with all of these things. So for me, instead of having one that has 9 calls to action, I have 3 or 4. And each of them only have 1 or 2 or 3 calls to action. So it'll say something like, we've got one that basically talks about getting equipment for your room. Hey, before you go out and buy a Blue Yeti, maybe it says, no offense, Ashish, don't hate me. Before you go out and buy a Blue Yeti for $129, I've got some vetted microphones and other equipment. So if you're ready to either get your very first affordable microphone or you're ready to upgrade, I've put together a whole PDF of everything that's in my office and that my team has vetted that are going to work for you. And we put together this PDF for you to be able to have all the equipment that you need. So if you're ready to upgrade your mic or just get your very first affordable mic, go to growyourshow.com/PDF and I will see you on the next episode. So there's 2 calls to action. There's one call to action, download the PDF. And the second one, I'll see you on the next episode. And that's pretty much what I want to do. On a different one, I will maybe offer a book. On another one, I might only offer the video course. On a different one, I might only offer a coaching call. I might say, hey, if you've been listening to this podcast, you're getting a lot of value. Let's help you take it to the next level. Let's just help you take it to the next level. Go ahead and schedule a call with me. I'm opening up some time to chat with my listener for free. And you can go to callwithadam.com. And that is a 10-minute call. And we'll see if we need to go anywhere from there. But we'll only say the one thing. And then maybe we'll say, see you on the next episode. So there's 2 calls to action versus the 9 or 7 that most people feel like they need to do. So the length of that could be 2.5 minutes if you want it to be. It could be 20 seconds if you want it to be. It won't matter so much. I love changing it up a bit because if it's the same exact one every single time, it starts the same way, it has the exact same music, it starts at the same time, it comes in, then they will think, your listener will think, I've heard this before, I don't need to listen to it again. And so when I have 3 or 4 different outros, I believe, I don't have data on this, I believe that people are more likely to listen the calls to action all the way through because they're like, I haven't heard this one yet, so.
This is a very solid point, actually. Plus, it gets, monotonous too, the same outro, the same intros every time. So I think it's good to have a fresh feel for your podcast. No, I like that. I like that. I love it. And
your mic sounds so much better, bro. The listener is like probably so happy that we switched it around. It sounds much better right now.
Thanks a ton. What are the mistakes one should avoid when you're launching and growing your podcast? Top mistakes people make?
There's a couple very common mistakes. And one of the biggest one is the feedback that we get from other people. We have heard many times over these few terms. Done is better than perfect. Mm-hmm. I can resonate with that. I get it. It's like, done is better than perfect. Another one that we hear, these are fallacies in a way. These give you bad advice for a podcast. Just start. Don't overthink it. Okay, I get that. Just start. I get it. Makes some sense. No wonder people follow that advice. Another thing that they'll say is ready, fire, aim. Ready, fire, aim. Just launch, bro. Don't wait. Just ready, fire, aim. You can fix it later. What else do they say? Done is better than perfect. Ready, fire, aim. Don't overthink it. You can change it later. While those things might be true, what is truer word, Ashish, is truer.
I don't know, actually, that you
I'll just say more true. I'll just say more true.
Truer.
What is more true is begin with the end in mind. It's have a plan of action. So to an extent, it's beneficial for you to have a podcast, but I don't want you to just have a shitty podcast that has no intention behind it. If you don't have intention behind every part of the podcast, if you don't have an understanding of what it leads to, you're going to miss the boat. So the two biggest things that you need to understand are, who am I serving and how do I serve them differently than the other people? Who do I serve and how do I do it differently? If you completely understand this, you can be intentional with your content. You can be intentional with your guests. You can be intentional with the questions that you ask your guest. You can be intentional about the calls to action that you have, the lead magnets that you offer. But a lot of people come into a podcast just floundering around, just having a podcast. There's this guy, his name's Rod Cleef. He's a podcaster as well. He says frequently, dabblers get crushed. Dabblers get crushed to me means that people that are serious, take it seriously, begin with the end in mind, plan it, outline it, have the intention all the way through, think of it like a business, they're going to get some major results. And the people that just kind of want to play around, they want to start their podcast, they want to try it out for a month, but it didn't get a whole bunch of traction in the first 4 weeks. And they're like, oh, this is pointless. I'm going to quit. So what I'm saying is focus on your listener and how you serve them differently. And for me, that we help people get a top podcast. So versus how do you have a podcast, just only focusing on the microphone and the room and the lighting, we could miss the boat on who am I serving? What do they need? What are they going through? What are their demographics, their psychographics, their geographics? And what's my unique proposition? How do I help them differently? When you can draw a line in the sand and show your listener, your avatar, if you go and Ashish, you're looking to raise private capital through your podcast. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay. So a thing that you need to be doing frequently is drawing a line in the sand and showing what these other companies do. And you might sound like a dick because you're offending someone or you're down talking somebody. You don't have to be here being talking about one person and just hurting their feelings or whatever, but you can say comfortably something like this. If you're listening to this podcast, this is for your avatar, Ashish. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably want to invest your capital somewhere that makes you a return. I just want you to be careful as you do it. Not every single operator is created equally. For example, and it's unfortunate, some operators are just getting started today. They've never sold one of their deals, so they don't have any type of proven track record. They might be kind, they might be cool, they might have a podcast, they might be in front of you. It doesn't mean that you're going to make the return that they say. Here's a few reasons why. Number one, not all underwriters are created equally. And if it's a brand new person that's never even sold a deal, it's highly probable they're doing the underwriting and it's not conservative. They probably got it from a broker who gave a crappy deal, a deal that nobody wanted, and they gave it to this person and they did the numbers a little bit wrong, or they fudged it, or they tweaked a couple of things. And it can be easy to do to make a bad deal look good on paper. And so they're getting into this. They don't have the experience probably managing the construction. So they probably put $5,000 per door and it's 100 units. So it's $500,000, but it's really going to be $25,000 per door. That's not uncommon right now to have a $25,000 per door expense. And that changes it from $500,000 to $2.5 million. And these people go underwater by $2 million. You thought you were going to get this return, but instead it went to these units because they just don't have enough experience doing what they're doing. My team, we've been doing this for a long time. We currently have, I don't know how many doors you have. It's 3,500. I don't remember. It's probably higher. A lot more.
A lot more than that. We curate our partners and deals, very experienced, at least 20 exits. And
20 exits. So tell me the number of doors. Impress us for a second.
More than 10,000.
More than 10,000 doors. So you can go in and be like, for example, Adam Adams, The max I ever had was 1,400. You're almost 10 times. You're pretty close to 10 times the experience as Adam Adams. Blah, 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 blah. And it's just, might not have to say Adam Adams, right? Me personally, I did 1,400. And that's the max I ever had. You've done 10,000. I would be more comfortable investing with somebody who's done 10,000 than somebody who's done 1,400. Or I could spin it. If you wanted. Like, there's always a way to spin this. And I think this is valuable for the listener too. And I might say something like, do you want somebody who's kind of got their hands all over the place and not really focused on anything? They're in 7 different markets. In some of those markets, they've got A class and B class and C class assets. And they're not all the same. And they've got different property managers that are kind of spread thin. My team, we don't buy that many. We're not trying to have the highest amount. We're just trying to have good deals that really make sense. And we might not have an opportunity come along every 12 days. But if you see an opportunity from us, you know it's a good deal because we probably looked at 300 and passed on them to get that one that we're going to put in front of you. So I might only have 1,400, blah, 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 blah. So I'm just showing like there's always a way to draw a line in the sand, regardless if you're at 10,000 or 1,400. If you're at 10,000, you can be like, do you want somebody who's only done 1,400? Like, we bought double that last week. We just bought double what the most Adams ever done, these other guys have ever done. And it's like, they're not experienced because other people have only gotten 1,400 or 300 or any other number. They're probably not getting the deals from the broker that we get. We're getting better deals. We're passing along the savings to you, blah, 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 blah. There's always a way to spin everything. Just focus on it, draw your line in the sand and say, this is what other people are doing. This is what we're doing. And this is why we do it. This is why our exit caps are different. This is why we only buy buildings with flat roofs. We only buy buildings with mansard roofs. We only buy buildings with pitched roofs. We only buy buildings with metal roofs. We only buy, you just, whatever it is, you tell a reason why is that. And you let your listener kind of follow you there. So draw your line in the sand all the time. I think I'm answering your question, but maybe not all the way.
Absolutely. I think this is very helpful. And I think we've covered pretty much whatever my intentions were to talk to you about. And this has been really, really helpful. I think I'm going to take some action and take your advice and grow our podcast here. We have been curating topics and really excited to, apply these to our upcoming podcasts.
What's the name of your podcast again? Your brand new one?
Wealthy Mind Podcast.
Wealthy Mind. Okay. It'll be in the show notes so the listener can go and check you out.
Thank you so much, Adam. I will send you a link to all the podcasts where we publish it.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on the podcast and reversing the role and asking me the questions today.
Thank you so much, Adam.
Oh, hey, because 3 of my clients came to me recently looking to find a way to have their podcast make them money instead of cost them money. We put together a resource for some of our clients, and I want to give it to you as well. It's something that did actually seem to help because one of them is now making $2,600 a month, another one's $4,500 a month, and the third is making between $5,000 and $10,000 each month. And so it's been a resource that's been incredibly valuable to them. It's our sponsor sheet template. It's a template of a sponsor sheet, and it gives you something that you can hand to potential sponsors and hopefully also be making $2,600, $4,500, or between $5,000 and $10,000 regularly each month with your podcast. So this has been a contributing factor to helping all 3 of those clients turn their podcast into an additional income stream for them. And the way that you can find it is just going to our website, growyourshow.com, but put in /templates, growyourshow.com/templates. And then you can actually download that template and others that could be valuable to your podcasting experience. I'll see you on the next episode.